You are listening to Small Farms Radio.
Hey everyone, welcome to Small Farms Radio. I'm your host, Jamie Johnson. So when you think about small farms in New York State, you probably don't think of a basement in Queens. In New York's urban agriculture ecosystem, mushroom growers are getting creative. This April, we sent our agroforestry specialist, Connor Youngerman, to follow a mushroom through the city. Hey Connor, how's it going?
Hi Jamie.
So Connor, we need some history. Can you tell us about Steve Gabriel's work and the Community Mushroom Educator Project?
Yeah, the Community Mushroom Educator Project, also known as CME. So this was a project that was sort of co-developed by Steve Gabriel, as you said, who was the guy that had the job before I had this job, and Yolanda Gonzalez, who works for Harvest New York, which is part of Cornell in New York City. And the idea was to develop a peer-to-peer, teach-the-teacher mushroom education program and then certification. So they got a grant to do this and wrote up a really awesome plan. So essentially it was folks who already had an active interest and knowledge about mushrooms and who were working in their community applied for it and then became part of, I think ultimately there were 3 cohorts of folks. And it was learning how to teach growing shiitakes on logs and growing oyster mushrooms on straw and growing wine caps in beds.
Okay, so now we know about the CMEs, but can you explain to me your role and why you went to New York City?
Okay, so part of my job, I do research and extension for mushrooms and agroforestry stuff. So anything that falls in those buckets. And a lot of the mushroom stuff that's happening in New York State is happening in New York City. So I had to go to where the happening was happening. And this was, I think by the time I went and did these interviews, this was like my 3rd or 4th trip to the city on what I like to say is mushroom business. When people say, why are you going to the city? Mushroom business. So each time I go, I make the effort to go visit farms I haven't visited before and hang out with mushroom people that I have not visited before, or people that I meet the previous trip who, like, maybe I meet at a mixer or an event that I can, it's like, oh man, I didn't know you existed. Next time I'm down, can I come check out your place? So over the course of a number of trips, I developed a small network of cool mushroom people. And some of them were CMEs who had gone through the program. Some of them were not. And all of them were super excited about mushrooms. And to me, it was very obvious that, like, wow, all these people are like linked in this circular economy almost. And I read a lot about the circular economy, or what could be a circular economy, and mushrooms really fit that paradigm quite well. So I wanted to share the story with the world on Small Farms Radio.
So you went around New York City, you met all these people. What was sort of a thread that tied them all together?
Yeah. So I went to the city with the goal of following a mushroom around the city, because I think a lot of people don't know how mushrooms grow and don't know that they're such a big part of urban agriculture, and that there's so many mushroom people and mushroom adjacent people in New York City specifically.
Okay, so where did you decide to start your journey following a mushroom around the city?
I don't know anybody directly who owns a restaurant in New York City, so I asked a friend who grows mushrooms, hey, if I wanted to talk to somebody who buys mushrooms and uses them on their menu. Who should I talk to? And so this was my friend Winston at Afterlife Ag. And he had a couple people in mind. And of course, chefs are ridiculously busy people. And so some of the people I reached out to were just like, yeah, maybe some other time, leave me alone. But then this wonderful executive chef at the State Grill and Bar was like, oh, yeah, absolutely. I'd love to talk. Well, when do you want to come? And so I went to the ground floor of the Empire State Building, and there was this amazing restaurant with this amazing head chef. And we sat down and talked about how mushrooms fit into her cooking and her menu and her way of sourcing food and thinking about local food systems, even when you're in the concrete jungle. So I'm here with my new friend Morgan Jarrett, who is the executive chef here. So I've come down to talk about mushrooms and how they fit into the restaurant landscape. Can you introduce yourself, and we'll take it from there.
My name is Chef Morgan Jarrett. I'm the executive chef at State Grill and Bar at the Empire State Building. We are the flagship restaurant here. We've been open for almost 11 years now.
So if you're a restaurant working out of the Empire State Building, what happens typically? What happens to all that food waste that someone produces in a restaurant?
In some restaurants, if they're super busy and they don't have a composting program in place, then it's either going to go into the trash, or if someone's running a nice kitchen, a lot of times vegetable scraps and stuff can go into stocks. But it's really going to vary from operation to operation. But here we have a great partnership with Afterlife Mushrooms in Queens, and they also have a composting program where all of our food scraps go into, and they pick up 3 times a week and take that back to their farm. And the compost eventually gets turned into mushrooms, comes back to us, so a full circle program.
So as Morgan talks about, the food scraps, the pre-consumer food scraps get picked up by Winston. So I met Winston over a year ago, in my very first trip to New York City. He came to an inoculation party, and we chatted a bit. And we worked on some grant stuff. And every time I go to the city, I like to go visit because their setup is just so cool.
Hey Connor, thanks for having me.
I'm really excited to touch base with you. So I wonder if you could start off and just tell us a little bit about your business, how it started and where it is now. And
Sure, yeah, of course. So I'm one of the co-founders of Afterlife Ag. I started this business really to figure out what to do with food waste, especially in urban cities like New York City. My family comes from a food background, so I grew up around food and around food waste, and I was in restaurants growing up, and there were also food distributors. So food waste is such a big problem, especially as like over 95% of that still goes into landfills, and that causes a lot of greenhouse gas emissions. So when we first started, we were just trying to figure out what to do with all this food waste that's being generated every day.
So you started as like a compost.
That's right, exactly, yeah. But realized that business doesn't work. It's a very logistics heavy business that requires a ton of density to make it work, and unfortunately, for cities like New York City, where it's expensive to do anything, you gotta find,
including to like throw stuff away, right?
For sure, yeah. Commercial waste management companies are expensive to work with. All these carters, they throw these food scraps like hours away from New York City into landfills, because that's the cheapest thing that they would do versus going to a compost farm. So we really wanted to solve for that problem. And when we first started, we were just thinking, okay, can we compost locally? through these micro digesters and realized it doesn't work. So we were like, what can we do with all these food waste that people are letting us pick up and collect? And we started testing it out with growing, mushrooms out of it, using mycelium as a way to decompose and digest the food waste that we feed it as a substrate.
This is amazing. And can you tell, do you take any old food scraps or food waste, or is it a specific stream?
Yeah, we've been testing this for quite a few years now. We've experimented with a lot of different types of food scraps. A lot of it comes from restaurants, some food distributors, some grocery stores too. But restaurants is predominantly the most of the food scraps. A lot of it is back of house, which is like 80-85% of all food scraps that comes out of a restaurant anyways. So we're talking about like tomato peels, lemon wedges, things that you don't eat, lettuce heads, but are just thrown away essentially. So fruit and veggies works well. We get coffee grounds, we get grains, we get meats as well. Fats. Meats and fats doesn't work as well, but we have our own formula that we use to manage it and make sure that we can still get good yields out of it. Yeah.
Wow. So because you're getting fresh scraps, there must be a composting step before you get to the mushroom step. Is that?
We really don't. We just purely sterilize it. We sterilize it as a way to kill off any microbes that would exist on the food waste when we collect it. We do collect it like every day for 6 days a week. So it is relatively fresh. But no, we don't really quote unquote compost first. We sterilize it using heat and pressure, but the mycelium is what's decomposing it and creating the soil amendment at the end of it.
The fungal machine. And so I've been to the mushroom farm, and it's amazing. It's quite a grow room. And did you guys start, because if I'm thinking back, you had a couple types of oysters and lion's mane and chestnut. Did you start with all of the mushrooms, or did you start small and work
definitely.
your way up?
Yeah, so when we first started, it was quite a small space. It's like 1,000 square feet of working space, including a grow room in there, which we were producing around like 150 to 200 pounds a week in like this tiny 100 square feet space, which works. It doesn't even have windows. We were just managing as well as we can as a way to proof of concept. And no, we were predominantly growing oysters because, as you know, oysters is one of the best decomposers in the world. It can clean up even oil spill and microplastics. Well, that's amazing things that oysters grows up in. Radiation. So that's, it is the workhorse. So we did definitely start there. And then since then we expanded into a huge variety of mushrooms. Lion's mane was the next one we did. We also do chestnuts and piopinos and a wide variety of others. I would say certain mushrooms doesn't work as well with food scraps. And I think partially because food scraps has too much nutrition. So actually the yields you won't get as high when you actually overfeed it.
So probably not as good for like shiitake or something like that.
Yeah, shiitake doesn't work as well. We tried maitake, that also doesn't work quite well too. But we're still constantly experimenting and constantly trying new things to see if we can make that work. Yeah.
Wow. And who do you sell to? Is it wholesale or is it restaurants?
Yeah, that's the most amazing thing about what we do is the people that we collect the waste from, all these restaurants and grocery stores, they're more than happy to get it back from us. So, which makes us a fully circular model. And they're super excited because, they rarely see their scraps come back as something that is edible for their customers. If you work in the food industry, if you're a chef, a lot of them appreciate that you can do something with food scraps because they see it as a waste every day, obviously. So it's something that they genuinely really appreciate. Yeah.
Then, we touched on it a minute ago where it's hard to get rid of stuff in New York City for free, especially waste.
Yeah.
So you're doing indoor production.
Yes.
And you're growing your mushrooms on these blocks made of food scraps.
Yes.
So what happens to those blocks afterwards?
Yeah, so what we currently do is we do partner with local parks and gardens, like the New York Restoration Project. We were working with the Governor's Island as well. We would donate our spent mushroom substrate to them. They use it for a variety of projects that they have, whether it's as an additive to their compost, or I know Governor's Island, for example, was using it on the coastal area because it gets so salty over there, so it kind of neutralizes it. I think it also helps prevent some erosion as well. So there's a variety of things that various parks and gardens in New York City use it for.
The more I learn about spent mushroom substrate, which are these blocks that have fruited mushrooms and they're tired, the mushroom has extracted like all the tasty bits out of it. It's still active and alive. There's still mushroom mycelium growing through that substrate. But there's just not enough food in there for mushrooms to really grow much out of it. And so in New York City, this is kind of an issue with a lot of indoor growers where they have this product, this spent mushroom substrate. Some people just throw them out because it's easy to do that and there's not really a defined market. But more and more folks who are growing mushrooms in this city are finding ways to creatively put that spent mushroom substrate to use. One problem is finding people to take your mushroom substrate, and one problem is also like arranging for the transportation of that substrate at a cost-effective way. So there might be people who are like, oh man, I would totally take 100 pounds of mushrooms, but I don't have a truck, or 100 pounds of spent mushroom substrate. So this really nice partnership between Afterlife Ag and New York Restoration Project that runs a lot of maintenance at parks and stuff is New York Restoration Project has the transportation capacity to go and pick up a bunch of spent blocks and use them for other things, like in their compost and growing mix, and to make more mushrooms. That's the other crazy thing. Oh my God, this is the other crazy thing. So you can take a spent mushroom block, and typically this is just like with oyster mushrooms. So like I said, it's still alive. There's still mycelium in there. There's just not a lot to eat. But if you put that block in a place where there is fresh food, so like in a bucket with freshly sterilized straw, it will colonize that and make more mushrooms. So you just provide the right conditions and you get infinite mushrooms, essentially. I think I also met Corey at the same time I met Winston. And so again, it's like meet people and then send them annoying emails pretty regularly throughout the year, just being like, hey, what are you doing? Here's what I'm doing. Want to chat? What should we do? And Corey is always very kind and responds and brainstorms with me and such.
My name's Corey Blant, and I am the Director of Urban Agriculture at NYRP, New York Restoration Project. And we are talking at our uptown field headquarters, the Sherman Creek Center, corner of Dyckman and 10th Avenue.
And so we're like right at the border of the Bronx and Manhattan.
Yeah, that's the Bronx. You see across the river?
Oh, there it is.
Okay.
Okay.
Literally, the Bronx, Manhattan.
So
we always say Upper Manhattan is like more Bronx anyway, so
Gotcha.
we're pretty much there.
So we're walking around some brick buildings and shipping containers and a ton of trees and landscape stuff. I can see the river right over there.
It's our field headquarters, right? So we have like plants everywhere, a bunch of our vehicles. It's where we store our never-ending stash of mulch and straw and all the things that we need to do our work all over the city.
Wow.
I could tell you more about New York Restoration Project. I probably should.
Tell me a little bit about New York Restoration Project and how you got involved here.
Sure. NYRP is happy to be celebrating its 30th anniversary right now, 2025, 30 years. We got started in the mid-90s, actually doing a lot of work cleaning up parkland. As the sort of years went on, NYRP happened to kind of enter the community garden world as too. There was some stuff happening. Giuliani was working to build more affordable housing and was trying to develop quote-unquote vacant lots, which were actually community gardens.
Okay.
And there was a partnership between Bette Midler and the Trust for Public Land to save a bunch of these vacant lots that were actually community gardens. Trust for Public Land helped save something like 60 from the auction block, and MYRP, Bette Midler, helped save another 50.
Wow.
And those gardens are now part of NYRP and a big part of what we do. 50 gardens across all 51, I think, across all the 5 boroughs, and we maintain them, we operate them. There's community groups that are super active in many of them. Really wonderful piece of the puzzle.
So hold on just a sec. So
Yeah.
I've been following mushrooms around the city, and we talked with Winston Wong over at Afterlife Ag, and they have a bunch of spent mushroom substrate, which makes its way over here. From Queens to here?
Sort of. Not to here, per
Not
se,
not
but,
literally to
but
here.
over elsewhere.
We'll start here.
We'll
Yeah.
start here. In the very beginning, 2021, I was invited by some friends to this inoculation party at the Red Hook Community Farm in Brooklyn. And I knew little to nothing about mushrooms other than that my partner loved to eat them. But I went because I liked the farm and hung out there, and it was so much fun that I went back a second day. And when I went back the second day, Sam Anderson and Yolanda Gonzalez were like, hey, you guys are driving that big white van, right? Can you help us deliver some of these logs to different gardens in the city? And I said, sure. They said, if you deliver all the logs, you can keep 25 for yourself. And knowing absolutely nothing about anything, I brought 25 shiitake logs, and they landed right here.
And they landed right here.
I spent that fall being like, well, this is really cool, but dang it, if it's not hard, I should probably try to get some more wisdom and guidance here. And I took the outdoor mushroom course through Small Farms.
Oh, perfect.
And on like my second day of class, having already paid the tuition and like gone all in, Yolanda was like, what are you doing here? You should be in the community mushroom educator class. You picked the wrong one, Corey. And I was like, nobody told me there was a community mushroom educator class. And so then I did the outdoor class, and then 3 months later, I did the community mushroom educator class.
Oh, wow. So you became a pro.
I would not say that I was a pro, but I would say that like by the end of that, at least 12 weeks, if not more, of like Zoom classes every, once or twice a week, I was like, okay, we're all in on this.
Yeah.
And that season, 2022, we just started like experimenting with mushroom stuff wherever we could, whenever we could, however we could. We did a bunch of wine cap beds and gardens in the Bronx and Queens. We did an almond agaricus bed in Queens.
Oh, nice.
In Jamaica.
Was that in a high tunnel, or that was just straight
It
out?
was just somebody had like a accidental compost pile that they didn't mean to have as a compost pile, and they were like, I don't know what to do with this. And someone on the team there, by the time we got to the community mushroom educator class, there were like 3 of us taking it. And someone on the team who had been paying attention in class was like, compost, almond agaricus.
Let's do that.
Boom. So we did almond agaricus in the compost bed and saw mushrooms. And that was awesome. So 2022 was a lovely year of trial and error. We were really fortunate, NYRP was super behind it from the beginning as an organization. And the gardeners that I worked with were just like so enthusiastic. Everybody, as soon as we mentioned, we were like, oh yeah, we're doing this mushroom class. People were like, yeah, come do mushrooms here. Like, we want your mushroom. Yeah, everybody wanted mushrooms. And so we just kind of kept trying stuff, and we didn't eat very many mushrooms in 2022.
And not to self-promote or whatever, but prior to that,
Oh, nothing.
have like people hadn't been, you hadn't heard much of mushroom cultivation in the city.
No, and yeah,
Okay.
no, nothing is the answer. We were not. That did not seem like that was something that was in the MYRP orbit, that was in the garden orbit. It just felt like it was one of these things where it snowballed. Like, as soon as the words mushroom started coming out of my lips, or like anyone around me at MYRP, we just kept hearing more and more, and
Like they're popping up like mushrooms all over the city.
indeed. Okay. So, continuing to tell the story in chronology, we didn't eat many mushrooms in 2022, but we didn't lose hope, and we regrouped in the winter and kind of decided, like, okay, we're gonna keep doing this, but we gotta figure out what we can do to set ourselves up for a little more success. And two big things happened as a result of those conversations. Thing number one was that we decided to move our whole operation into the teaching garden. We are walking down Marginal Drive on our way to the teaching garden right now. The teaching garden has a nice area which has kind of been in a state of transition, basically as long as I've been at MYRP. But most recently, in the last couple of years, we're really actively building it up as a new edible food forest. Back here, in our mushroom farm, you see the sign. We do call it the mushroom farm cheekily, but it is the edible food forest. Normally we have 3 systems up and running. So we have stuff growing on logs. Vast majority of it is shiitake. We have wine caps on wood chips, which the bed is currently under one of the stacks. That was an oopsies, but it will get moved eventually. I sure hope there aren't any wine caps that are trying to push out. And then we do a lot of oyster on straw. And depending on the moment in the season and what our own capacity is like and who we're working with, sometimes we will honestly just make little holes in our raised beds, throw some straw, break up a spent block, cover it up. But we also oftentimes have back here buckets with straw and oysters going out of them. And so folks who can come back here kind of get to see, here's a couple different ways that you can grow mushrooms in New York City in a garden context if you're excited about that. We, over the years, have had all kinds of different mechanisms for getting that oyster spawn, that starter stuff for all of our oyster growing. We used to work really closely with Smallhold. Smallhold, when that wasn't an option anymore, we were buying spawn from Field and Forest, which we love working with Field and Forest, but it was getting really expensive to have to buy all that spawn. And lucky for us, there are multiple people on the MYRP staff who work a side hustle with Afterlife Ag. And one of them, Kayreen, bless her heart, kept being like, you gotta talk to these folks. Please, let me introduce you to Paul. They have so much spawn, or they have so many spent blocks and they don't know what to do with it, and I think there's an opportunity here. And finally, sometime in like early 2024, I was like, okay, Kayreen, we'll talk to Paul. And we made the connection, and it's basically been like a match made in heaven for us. We probably go to them at least once or twice a month to pick up like 50 or more spent blocks at a time.
So they're done with the spent blocks, and do you prefer, like, because I know they grow about 5 different species there. You just take everything as it is?
We have two versions of it, right? So if we want to grow oysters, like if we know this is going to be for our oyster production in the mushroom farm, in the edible food forest, then we'll try to ask them to separate for us. And we will take the pink, the blue, the golden, all the oysters are fine for us.
Okay.
But separating from like the lion's mane, and I think
chestnut.
They're doing chestnut, right. But the other thing we started doing, the more we were working with them and the more we were sort of figuring out our rhythm and flow, it all started because we were looking for spawn, we were looking for material to grow oyster. But we started getting stuff from them, and like we'd set up our oyster buckets or whatever we were doing, and then we'd have a little bit left over, and we'd throw it in our 3-bin compost system. And we realized, like, by the third time we did that, we were like, oh my God, as soon as you add that spent block to the compost, it's like the compost heats up immediately. Our 3-bin system, which we had been trying to dial in for years, we'd just been like having a really hard time getting it up to temperature, figuring out what the right rhythm and flow is. We don't sift here, so ideally we want stuff to really just like completely dissolve, break down on its own. And like we added the afterlife spent block, and it was just like the secret sauce that we had been missing the whole time. I kid you not. And so now every single time we do anything in our compost system, or at least every single time we're like building, we're adding to our system, we're adding spent blocks.
Okay.
So, I would say about half of what we take from them, we're putting it right into our compost system, maybe more. And the rest of it, we're refruiting.
Okay.
In some way, shape, or form.
Wow.
And you can see, like, you came on the right day.
Big old, what is that?
It must be a blue, right?
Yeah, that's like a blue oyster. That's huge.
It's
just popping
spectacular.
out the bottom of
This is the first time it happened. It clearly knew
Just
you were
for me.
coming.
That's
It
right.
knew you were coming. Yeah. In the last couple of years, we have also there's been a ton of mushroom stuff. And if I were to count on my hands and toes, it's probably close to like 20 different gardens that we've done some sort of mushroom related programming in since. And that's like takes the form of a workshop, but of course it's not just like a one and done workshop where the thing happens and then we leave. It's like setting folks up either with a wine cap bed or with a pile of shiitake logs, and then trying to come back and coach them and be available and on call as needed to help them see that to the actual fruit of their labors, the mushrooms themselves. And last year, 2024, we did get 7 of 7. So we had 7 gardens where we inoculated shiitake logs in the spring, and like by fall, only 6 months in, which just boggles my mind.
Yeah, that's crazy.
There were shiitakes popping in all 7. We were very proud of that.
I'm just sort of reflecting on like mushroom growers and urban gardeners are kind of like on the fringe in New York City. Like New York City isn't really set up to support them, if you know what I mean. And they're sort of like making it work. And there's a lot of, growers helping each other out, or people who work with.
Yeah, I mean, yes and no. I think there is a good amount of support, and there's growing support from the city for urban food projects. But that that hasn't translated yet into converting like Penn Station into a mushroom yard yet. But that's the goal. Is Penn Station should just mushrooms. I'm sure no one would complain. But what I've noticed with mushroom farmers, mushroom growers, people who are enthused about mushrooms and have sort of hands-on experience, is they tend to be very resourceful people, because mushrooms are resourceful. So, whether it's the crop is attracting a like-minded person, or just by hanging out with mushrooms, you become more resourceful because you see the world through their paradigm. I think people who are interested in mushrooms kind of are always experimenting on the side and always looking at like, hey, or here's some weird stuff. What if I try growing mushrooms on that?
It does feel like an exciting, like, we haven't touched this. It feels like there's a lot we can do with growing mushrooms, and especially when applying it to like these full circle models. And I feel like that is part of the appeal that brings people in. Like there's exciting potential there. It feels like a frontier in some ways.
Yeah, it is, and it's about as closed of a loop as you can get in agriculture, I think. So like, you can take corn stover, which is what, when they harvest grain corn or corn for grain, stover is like the cob and the junk that's left. You can take that, and grow mushrooms on it. Harvest your mushrooms, take that spent substrate, feed it to cows. It's very nutritious. Cows love it. Then you take the cow manure, put it on the cornfields, and repeat. And there's all these ways that you can use that, like breaking down a waste product and valorizing it into something useful for another system, kind of in anything. So yeah, everybody should grow mushrooms.
And that's all for today, folks. Join us next time to continue talking about mushrooms with Connor and focus in on farming mushrooms in New York City. We're going to share a few more conversations with mushroom growers from across the 5 boroughs and think about what it takes to start a mushroom operation in New York. If you like our show and you want to hear more, make sure you subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Also, we'd love to hear what you think of the show. So give us a call at 607-255-4455. Or you can email us at smallfarmsprogram@cornell.edu. See you next time.